Alright? Let's drink to not doing anything. Cheers. Welcome back, everybody, to me doing the weekly navel-gazing thing, where I talk about all the books I read last week and all the videos I failed to make last week and all the big books I plan to read this week and all the videos I'm going to fail to do, well, this week. And let's get started and talk about books that I read. And I did, in fact, read at least a few books, so not as bad as it could have been, right? I did finish reading Summer of Fire and Blood by Lyndall Roper, which is a history of the German Peasants' War. And it's a good overview book, I would say. I like how much Roper ties the Peasants' War and the Peasants' Uprising with the social things that, lay at the source of this in a lot of ways. How she ties that into the early Reformation and ideas of, Reformation theology, different approaches to Christianity that, obviously tied to places like, Martin Luther, who famously did betray the Peasants' Uprising in the most brutal ways, also through his, theological debates with people like Thomas Müntzer and so forth, and the way that is all tied into Summer of Fire and Blood, I think, is a really helpful book, really helpful approach to talking about the German Peasants' War, beyond, the very clearly like Marxist history, the more class warfare kind of approach to talking about the German Peasants' War. So, really good book. If you've never heard about the German Peasants' War from 1525, yeah, go check out that book. It also even mentions, the famous flood, prophecies about a second deluge in the year 1524, which was done by one Martin Seitz, something that I had to write a term paper at university about, so it was nice to see that kind of come up again. Really good. So I read that. Then I did reread The Worm Ouroboros by E.R. Edison, which is, of course, something of a classic of the fantasy genre. One that other fantasy authors were very much enamored by. It had an impact on Tolkien. It had an impact on a lot of people. And it's a classic from 1922, I think. If you haven't read it, I highly recommend reading it. You'll learn a lot. It is very unique in a lot of ways. It does not necessarily read like any contemporary or modern fantasy. It's in that regard, it's much less, much less sort of like close to contemporary fantasy than, say, something like Lord of the Rings. And I know some people already struggle with like reading Lord of the Rings compared to, say, contemporary fantasy in a lot of ways. So be aware of that. It often reads more like mythology or like romanticized retellings of mythology and legends in a lot of ways. It uses a very archaic language, but you can learn a lot of cool things from that book. So highly recommend reading it if you haven't ever. It is one of those classics. Speaking of classics, the other thing that I've read, or am about to finish by the time this video is up, the last stories I will have read, some of them I've read before, is, of course, In the Land of Time, which is a collection of fantasy stories by Lord Dunsany, edited by S.T. Joshi, with an introduction by S.T. Joshi. It includes stuff like The Gods of Pagana, which I have read before. Obviously, I've read before King of Elfland's Daughter, which is not part of this collection. It's more like a collection of short stories, some prose poems, that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's always nice to go back to Dunsany and read some more Dunsany, because he was a really interesting and, once again, a very unique sort of like early fantasy author that has a very specific approach to language and so forth. Highly recommend, if you've never checked out any Dunsany, maybe read The King of Elfland's Daughter, or if you're on Audible, this collection is currently part of the Audible Plus catalog, so you can get like 17 hours of Lord Dunsany for nothing. So, why not try it? So yeah, that's my reading for last week. I did not read as much as usual because I got sidetracked by a lot of things, which brings us to reading plans for this week. And I don't have any. Once again, I'm very not insecure, but like very chaotic at the moment. I have no idea what kind of books I'll be reading after, obviously finishing In the Land of Time. I might go back to doing some more Mormon reading or rereading and research, or I might pick up some other book, fantasy, science fiction, historical fiction, that kind of stuff. who knows? It's all up in the air at the moment, and part of my general sort of like being lost situation, mentally lost, I guess, is what I'm saying here. So yeah. If you have suggestions, let me know. I know I'll be reading With the Old Breed, which is a memoir from the Second World War Pacific Theater, because I'll be joining some other booktubers talking about that stuff, historic, the Pacific campaign in a lot of ways next week on a live stream. Yeah. So I'd better read that book. That's going to happen sometime until, well, the 1st of April. Which is sort of like where this all will end. Otherwise, yeah, if you have ideas what I should read, let me know. I'm, as I said, somewhat lost at the moment. Which brings us to the question of videos. Did I make any? The answer is no. Yeah, I don't know, last week it didn't work. That's kind of what it boils down to. I started recording or re-recording, yet again, parts of the Mormonism video, and it just didn't work. I had to stop recording a part like in the middle because I just couldn't focus. I couldn't say the things I wanted to say. It didn't come across right. It just wasn't there, and I have no idea why that is, but it is what it is. So instead, I listened to a lot of punk rock and was very happy with that. So yeah, go check out some old Propaganda songs if you haven't. Check out the new Propaganda song if you haven't. And yeah, that's kind of what I did a lot last week. Which is interesting and says a lot of like my abilities to focus and what happens when sort of like my brain switches into like one specific rut and I can't get out of that. And my hope is, of course, that I will be able to get back to the important stuff like Mormonism this week. We will see if that works. I'm certainly trying, but yeah. Which brings me to the question of like videos this week. And the answer is also, I have no idea. We will do the monthly live stream on Saturday. There should be a thumbnail up very soon. It will be fun. I'll have a guest unless something drastically changes, and it'll be exciting. So join me on Saturday for the monthly live stream. And beyond that, maybe Mormonism video, maybe something else that I spontaneously think of. Who knows? The other part is, of course, that right now I am incredibly broke because of, stuff this month being more expensive than I thought, which means I don't know if I can afford more beer, and we all know that unless I have these beers, I am mentally and physically unable to record videos. It's not fully true, but you know what I mean, right? So, we'll see how things go in that regard this week as well, if I can afford the props for the videos. Anyway, so ideally I'll go back and do actually record the Mormonism video, and if I have like an idea for a quick book-related video or something else, then that will happen. But the main thing will be the live stream on Saturday. Speaking of live streams, I kind of stopped doing the breakfast sprints during last week. I did them on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, and then Thursday and Friday I did not. And that's something I'm undecided about at the moment. I might return to doing them, but I wanted to see what happens productivity-wise if I actually, instead of starting sprints at 8 in the morning, if I go to the gym at 8 in the morning and come back home at, 10, 11-ish. So whether that will lead to the rest of my day being more productive, starting on writing, reading, recording, whatever, a couple hours earlier and maybe getting more stuff done. Now, I don't know if that is the case or not, because, as I said, then, unfortunately, at the same time, my brain kind of fell into this other rut where I spent my time, I don't know, reading politics, listening to punk rock, and not actually being able to focus on anything. So this is still up in the air. I guess I'll try this approach for at least, this week, see if it works better for me, and if I can actually get more stuff done, ideally this week. And if that's the case, then I guess for the time being, we'll do it this way. Maybe I'll switch it back to like breakfast sprints next week. I am undecided about this. I know that some of you are watching those, and I was always very, very happy, and I'm very glad that some of you did, in fact, watch those morning sprints. It was like usually 4 or 5 people watching them. So yeah, I just wanted to see if, going to the gym at 8 does sort of like lead to more productivity down the road. And ideally, if it means that I have sort of like the energy to record enough parts of the Mormonism video this week every day to, actually get most of it done, then I guess that is a trade-off or a sacrifice that I'm willing to make for now. But I'm also certainly considering to go back to the breakfast sprints if, well, it turns out that all I do is like go to the gym 2 hours early and then waste the rest of my day afterwards anyway. But that's something I still need to figure out. So yeah, I don't know. It's a weird. I'm in a weird place mentally at the moment, I think, and that kind of all ties into that in a lot of ways. Like it is springtime. Springtime usually is sort of like this moment when everything kind of changes and we all feel slightly different and more active, or maybe not more active, but like certainly feel like change. And that's part of it. Then there's obviously stuff happening in my life or around my life that also impact my thoughts, friends, personal stuff that I don't talk about on the channel. So I'm not going to go into detail, but certainly stuff that also leads to me sort of not being necessarily able to focus too much, or certainly having my thoughts sort of drift away and being lost without like concrete plans of what to do in a lot of ways. Having the financial situation happening this month is also certainly impacting me because, having no money kind of sucks. I don't have to tell you that, right? And I'm going to go and donate blood, hopefully on Wednesday, so I get a little money from donating blood, and that will hopefully cover, food and stuff for the rest of the month until, the 1st of April when I have, like, access to my money again, or to money again. It's a weird situation. I do have money, but because of all the debts that I still owe, mostly the city, for past stuff when I was like too depressed to do paperwork, basically. Due to that, I cannot access that money that I still have on my bank account until the next month, because it's supposed to, go into servicing those debts over time. And that is frustrating, because if something unforeseen comes up, like, having to stay in Athens for longer and having to pay for access, additional hotel rooms and stuff like that, basically left me out about 100 euros, which, are exactly what is missing right now, basically. So, and that does also, like, make it harder to focus, right? It makes it harder to think. It makes it harder to do the things that I should do, right? Ideally, if I could sit down and record the video, and then the video will do really, really good, which it won't, but you know what I mean, right? That is certainly something that might help with finances, but because of, that whole sort of like dull thing at the back of my brain of like, I can't, I need to figure out how to pay for food for one more week. That is also makes it harder to focus. And I certainly don't know what exactly to do about that, because it's one of those dumb sort of like situations where I'm basically those debts being so large, and I don't have to tell you that, like, if you have, say, student loans or whatever other like large debts, and you kind of know that this will be with you for the next year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, basically, no matter what you do, you'll basically be in this very constrained situation. I'll basically be in this constrained situation until I've paid off all of these massive debts, and until then, I can't do any like larger investment into anything sort of like that might, help sort of like raise money afterwards. For example, do more stuff with the record label, press new vinyls. That costs way too much than I can currently spend. And being in this sort of like cycle that go nowhere is certainly something that is very, very frustrating. While, at the same time, it's spring and I want to do cool things. I want to start new projects. I want to be out there doing stuff. And I'm like, yeah, well, but I can't. Because I can't afford it, and I won't be able to afford it until I suddenly win in the lottery and can pay off all my debts in like one fell swoop, and then go to whatever next thing will happen next, basically. Which is, certainly impacting my approach to, not my approach, but like my ability to focus, to sort of like step out of the tried and true. And I think that's the biggest problem. I've spoken about this before, of wanting to maybe film outside or maybe could have taken the, well, I did take the camera, I just didn't record anything in Athens, recording videos in Athens, taking, actual footage from like outside, cool places, stuff like that, which sort of require a level of confidence or, well, overconfidence, I guess, in my case, and the current situation of like, springtime energy and so forth is where I could technically or theoretically get that boost of confidence and energy and so forth, and security, I guess. Could get that from that, and it's always sort of like right behind that weird sort of like wall that I can't actually fully break through, and that wall is sort of this this leaden sort of like feeling of, I'm basically stuck in this weird cycle of not being able to get anywhere because of things I fucked up in the past. And I try not to sort of let that sort of like deter me too much, but it's certainly something that has been impacting me the last couple of weeks, and it's certainly holding me back with something like the Mormonism video as well, because let's face it, it takes a lot of fucking confidence to make that video, because it's sort of slightly outside of my wheelhouse. I'm constantly anxious that someone will tell me that I've fucked up somewhere in the process of making it, and then at the other end there's obviously the fear that after reading almost 30 books and making like a video that will probably be like 2.5, 3 hours long, then like, I don't know, 50 people will watch it, and then nothing will happen afterwards, and it would be all sort of for naught. And sort of like, these things are very much sort of like struggling, things I struggle with in my mind and in my, sort of like mental being in a lot of ways at the moment. And I don't know what to do about it. Just keep keeping on, I guess, and hopefully something cool will happen or show up, or I'll just actually manage to basically just push through with the Mormonism video and just ignore what happens after that. You know what I mean? Hopefully that'll work. We will see. But I think that's enough rambling for one Monday afternoon. At least my gym time is working out really well, and I did manage to extend my cardio routine from 2 hours to 2.5 hours. 2.5 hours running or, doing cardio is not bad, I think. Please hold me back from running marathons if that's the next sort of like midlife crisis step that I'm getting towards. I don't want to do that. But yeah, at least that works, so I guess it's not all bad. But yeah, let me know what you did last week, what you watched last week, what you read last week, what you listened to last week, all of those things that hopefully made last week a cool week for you. And let me know what your plans are for this week, and all the things that will hopefully make this week an even greater time for you, and hopefully for me as well. As always, thanks for hanging out. Like, subscribe, comment, do all of those wonderful things. Join the Patreon if you feel like it. Maybe also join the channel if you feel like it. You don't have to, though. Just doing the things that I should do when, if I take this all, slightly seriously. Anyway, thanks for hanging out with me. Thanks for sticking with me. Yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.